Welcome to Church of the Epiphany in Norfolk, Virginia. This is the first of our series of online Lenten programs. They're intended to be fairly short presentations on various topics. I'm Richard Bridgford. With me is Julia Ashby, and we're alternating responsibility for these, and tonight is Julia's turn.
Tonight, my topic is myself as creation. But as I thought about that as a title, I didn't really like it, because I think the emphasis should be on creation, not me. As human beings, we have a tendency to see the world through the lens of our eyeballs, and so everything does seem to be centered on us. So I must be an important part of creation. I'm experiencing it. I'm talking to you about what I'm experiencing. Of course I'm important. But I thought after I mulled it over for a while that it's creation where the emphasis should be. And it really does make a difference where you put the emphasis. So what I want to talk about today is creation and how that isn't a stage that I live on. It is something I live within, something I am a part of, almost like organs being a part of a body or planets being part of a solar system. William Shakespeare once said, "All the world's a stage." And when I was growing up, the earth and the solar system and all of creation was seen as a stage, as a backdrop, to who we are and what we're doing. The most important thing in all of creation was human beings, you and me.
Right.
And so that's different for me now than it was when I was growing up. Now, I grew up with a very small black and white television. And in the 60s, Jacques Cousteau was on television a lot, showing us his underworld adventures in the ocean. He was a marine biologist, and he was really opening our eyes to the world that we generally only saw the surface of, and that is the ocean. When we go down to the ocean here in Virginia Beach or in Norfolk, we see the ocean, but we're not seeing all the things that Jacques Cousteau used to show us. And so even on a black and white small television, I was being exposed to a texture of the world and a depth to the world that really isn't compatible with the idea of the world being a stage, because it is so immense and so complicated. So I was thinking, as I was growing up, in the 60s I lived in Ohio, and Lake Erie was so polluted in my childhood that you couldn't drink from it, you couldn't swim in it, and eventually it caught on fire. And in my lifetime, there has been a process of cleaning up Lake Erie so that it is not as polluted now as it was when I was a child. Sort of interesting. So ecology for me is something that when I was growing up, it started to be talked about in school. Ecology was the way organisms relate to their surroundings. And I was learning about it on television, I was learning about it in classes, and I was wondering, do you remember having those kinds of things in your past?
I came up a generation ahead of you.
Right.
And we didn't have television or anything like that. We read books. We really were well read. But I don't ever remember it being mentioned. When I heard about earth science being taught in school, I thought, what in the world is earth science? And that was fair. So the first thing that I remember of any concern was the Keepone spill in the James River.
Right.
out of Hopewell.
Yes.
And the James River got polluted, our beautiful James River, and
Yes.
had to be closed. And there was all this concern about that. That's the first thing, and that's not that long ago.
No.
Probably 60s, 70s, somewhere
Right.
around in there.
Right.
That's the first time I remember even thinking about, oh my gosh. And in terms of ecology and the word and all the global warming and all of that, that's really fairly recent for me. And I've gotten into it in kind of a big way
Right.
now because I live on the water. And when I bought that house 40 some odd years ago, the water behind my house was very polluted. And since then it's been cleaned up pretty well, but the efforts to clean it up were significant.
Yes.
And I had a boat and used to go out and it smelled so bad you hated to get in the boat and took a shower when you came back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about when I went to seminary, which was quite a bit after you went to
Right.
seminary, because I went to seminary in the 90s.
And I was in the 60s,
Right.
mid-60s.
And in the 90s, when you went to seminary, they had creation spirituality. Matthew Fox was starting to talk about how creation is related to us as people. And sort of remember in the story in Genesis where it says that we're meant to subdue creation,
Right.
that mankind was
Take dominion over.
was supposed to
yeah,
take
that's right.
dominion and
right.
subdue creation. And Matthew Fox started thinking, well, maybe not. Maybe what we're supposed to do is be stewards, and stewardship has become a much more common word
Right.
than it used to be. Although I know that in Genesis 2, the creation story, man was created to till the earth, so he was created for the environment, to take care of the environment, and the woman was created to take care of the environment and the man and all of that too. So there is a sense in Scripture of creation as something that we have responsibility for,
Right.
not just that it's a material for us to use or a backdrop to our very important lives. When I was in seminary, I was first introduced to Paul Tillich, who was a Lutheran who had been greatly influenced by World War II and by all the horror of World War II. And he started to come up with an image that was very helpful to me, and that was God as the ground of being. Do you remember
Okay.
that?
No, I don't.
Well, I will read you a little piece.
Okay.
Paul Tillich was from 1886 to 1965.
I was there.
He was German born. He was American Protestant theologian and philosopher, an early critic of Hitler, and he explains religion as a matter of ultimate concern. God should be our ultimate concern. And here's something that he says in The Shaking of the Foundations. The name of this infinite and inexhaustible depth and ground of being is God. That depth is what the word God means. And if that word has not much meaning for you, translate it and speak of the depths of your life, the source of your being, and your ultimate concern of what you take seriously without reservation. That opened up a whole new world for me. I started to see myself as part of creation, that my being springs from God's being, as all creation does. Because God is the only one that is uncreated. Now, I'm sure they talked about the
In the beginning was
God.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he already was, or God already was.
God already was. So, do you have any more that you want to share that comes to mind?
One of our congregations in town, not too many years ago, really got into the idea of caring for creation,
Right.
and started a big program. That was the first that I kind of got excited about it. I went to somebody's house for dinner from that congregation, and they were so excited and talking about all the things that they were doing around caring for creation. I thought, wow, this is really unusual. This is really neat. I wonder where it's going to go. And I figured it'd just peter out,
Right.
but it hasn't. And you know, this church is located just a couple of blocks from Lafayette River out
Right.
here, and we're seeing such a change in that river where they just last summer found seahorses in the river that haven't been there for God knows how long.
Yes.
But the river's clean enough now that some of these more fragile things, seahorses, and in the Lafayette River, they're not
Right.
neat. So.
Right. It's like in Italy, they were finding dolphins going
Yes.
down the canals in Venice.
Yes.
But they haven't been there forever.
Yeah, I guess during the pandemic,
Yes.
when the
Everything
pollution
was
wasn't
closed.
going, they could see to the bottom of the canals for the first
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess what I wanted to talk about, and I'd like for you all to think about, is that creation isn't something separate from us. That to talk about taking care of creation is not to talk about taking care of something that's sort of removed. When I talk about taking care of creation, I'm talking about taking care of Richard. I'm talking about taking care of myself, taking care of those I love, because we live in a symbiotic relationship with all of creation. Without water, without air, without us, there is no world as we understand it. And so when I talk about creation spirituality, I'm just talking about being human and what it's like to live on earth and how we can take care of each other and the earth so that we can be here for a long time.
And we're also seeing in the extreme weather conditions we've been getting and all, what happens when we don't.
Yes.
And we're just discovering that there is quite a price to pay
Yes, we
if
are.
we don't take care of each other and take care of things, yeah.
And actually, I think that's my main point is taking care of climate change, for instance. That
Right.
sounds so ethereal.
Removed
Yeah.
and out there. And
Doesn't
sounds
sound
nice,
real.
but don't
Yeah.
ask me to get too
Doesn't
excited.
sound like real life.
Right.
Yeah, but it is real life because we are so connected to where we live, and who we are is part of Earth.
Right.
We are earthlings.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, that is very scriptural because Adam is from Adamah. Adam is from earth. And that was something that people knew long, long ago. And so we can live into that reality.
Adam was formed of the earth, and then in our burial service, earth to earth, ashes to ashes.
Dust
You know,
to dust.
the cycle
Yes,
completes.
it does.
Yeah.
It does. So I'm going to end with a quote from a photographer of the 20th century who said something that I just think is beautiful. He spent most of his life taking pictures at Coney Island in New York City. His name was Harold Feinstein. And this is one of the things that he said. Whatever is within the flowers is within us. We are part of this universe, whether I'm looking at a human hand or looking at the galaxies of shooting stars or the flight of a bird. Something marvelous is going on, and I'm a part of it. We're all a part of it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.